Welcome, adventurers, to the Journals of Thorgrin and Bella. I am your host, the Great Sean, and as you can tell from my voice today, I'm sick AF. I still wanted to upload a video today, and I realized that my intended pattern of primarily showing off homebrew content that I designed, that might not work for my sick voice, because that would be a video that someone, if they're interested in the homebrew, may want to be coming back again and again, and they might not want to listen to my disgusting raspy voice. So, instead I decided I wanted to throw my 2 cents into a debate that is currently being waged in the D&D community today. And that is, should the Drow be evil or morally neutral? Or, hell, good? I will say right off the bat that I think the Drow should be a morally neutral race, by default. So, what are the 2 sides to this argument? I'll focus on first against them being morally neutral, and then for them being morally neutral. So, a lot of people have the idea that the Drow should be a purely evil race, simply because that's what they've always been. That is how the Drow are designed to be used in a narrative sense. They are supposed to be these faceless bad guys that you don't need to feel bad about slaughtering them in the millions, because they're the bad guys. They sacrifice people to Lolth, and that's who they are. On the other side, my side, I am under the impression that restricting the storytelling in a storytelling tool like Dungeons and Dragons is a negative thing. Me as a DM, if I am running a setting that the Drow are evil, like say the Forgotten Realms, I am limited in the amount of stories I can tell with the Drow, or types of stories I could tell. If I was not running in my setting of Deltama, and I was running in the Forgotten Realms, I don't usually do that, but I do keep an open mind to other settings. If I wanted to have a sect of Drow that broke off from Lolth, then I would kinda be screwed, because I can't really do that. The Drow are evil, and I'm not too big of a fan of that. So you might be thinking, well, the official source material will have the answer. There's no point in debating it. There is a canon answer, and that doesn't really work, because even the source materials, the campaign settings and all that, the books for them released by Wizards of the Coast, are a little bit confused whether the Drow should be neutral or evil. Some books say that the Drow see the world in a very hierarchy lens, that every intelligent creature that a Drow meets is either the Drow's superior or inferior. There is no equals in the eyes of a Drow. And if someone is inferior, causing mental, physical, emotional harm to that person is not a morally evil act. It is purely a neutral act. Thus, because the Drow would feel very entitled and stuff, they're the elves, they're the best kind of elves, and everything else is below them, makes them pretty darn evil. Of course, then there's the issue of Illistri. Illistri is a good Drow god, or goddess, I should say. And the reason that I put quotation marks is Illistri is still a little bit sexist, and I consider that the biggest sin of the Drow and Lolth and all that. Well, if you discount the, murder, that is the biggest constant. And Illistri still falls into that, and as a man myself, a person who identifies as a man, that makes me uncomfortable that the god that everyone says, oh, it's the savior of the Drow, these are the good ones, that if I was a Drow, I would not be allowed to be a priestess of Illistri. That kind of makes me a little bit uncomfortable, so I will put the quotation marks. However, for the purpose of this argument, Illistri is a good Drow god. So, even the source books are a little bit confused, because they say that Drow can come to the surface and live a normal life, but then they're also really evil, and it's not something that they can help. This is an oxymoron. This is a big shrimp. This is a slow race car. This is a nice asshole. This is confusing and an oxymoron. These two things cannot coexist. So I say that the Drow should have their evilness purely coming from their culture. This would open up a lot of different storytelling stuff. If I could change the canon for the Forgotten Realms, what I would have is Illistri is not a sexist deity that they would allow men and women priestesses and all that. But I would also have her a lot bigger of a deal. I would have her as a real rival to Lolth, that the population of Drow is split 50-50. That there are Drow, a very large margin of Drow, that follow Illistri, live on the surface, maybe still in the Underdark fighting the forces of Lolth, and then there are Lolth's Drow, that are just as you imagine them. Evil sons of bitches that just want to sacrifice people to Lolth and are sexist to men and all that. That's what I would do. So there. Also, as a little side thing, sunlight sensitivity on player characters is stupid. I think it could have some potential for making the fights more engaging, but in its current state, it needs to be changed. Now, I could be wrong on this, so don't yell at me in the comments if I get this wrong, but I think how sunlight sensitivity currently works is if you or your opponent your target are in direct sunlight or direct very bright light, you have disadvantage on your attack roll. That really sucks for people like me that want to play a Drow gunslinger. Because like a dark elf with a gun, that's awesome. I'm thinking like a really cool cowboy hat and stuff. That's awesome. How I would have sunlight sensitivity, and like it doesn't come into play that much, but still it would be nicer if it could be like this. If has nothing to do with your target being in direct sunlight. It is purely you being in direct sunlight. I'm having a idea of you're fighting in a forest and you're a drow archer and you have to be sticking close to the trees to be in the shade so that you can see, and every once in a while you have to like look around for the next tree, close your eyes because it's gonna hurt, and run to the next tree to get out of cover, to get out of the crossfire, and then you get into the shadows and you can see again, you could turn around, take another shot, no disadvantage. So yeah, I think it should not have anything to do with if your target is in direct sunlight, but you in direct sunlight. So yeah, those are my little 2 cents on the Drow and how you could change the Drow to be more interesting in a narrative sense. But that's just the hot take of this little sick boy, so I'm just going to go back to my chicken noodle soup and my raspy voice and go back to moping. Have fun.